found this small decorative piece outside, and I'm trying to figure out what it originally belonged to. It looks like it could be part of an old toy bed, or maybe a miniature furniture set with detailed carved edges. Does anyone know what it is? This is a component from a Japanese diorama, specifically a railing or border piece that sits along the edge of a miniature bridge. These dioramas, often called jokamachi or model landscape scenes, are a traditional craft hobby in Japan where artists recreate temples, gardens, and feudal towns in fine detail. The piece you have is molded to imitate the ornamental balustrades found on traditional arched bridges. Once separated from the full scene, these parts are nearly impossible to identify without context. I found this in my kitchen, wedged between my pans. It's a small cylindrical device with a piston-like rod sticking out of one end. I have absolutely no clue where it came from or how it ended up there. Does anyone know what it is? This is a soft close damper, most likely from an IKEA Rationale drawer system. The device uses hydraulic or pneumatic resistance to slow down the motion of a closing drawer or cabinet door. When you push the drawer shut, the rod compresses against a small tab at the back of the cabinet, and the internal fluid or air resistance absorbs the momentum, preventing a slam. If you check the back corners of your kitchen drawers, you'll likely find an empty mounting bracket where this one popped out. My wife and I were out of town for a few weeks. We just got back and noticed this object glued to the back of our cat's auto feeder. It looks homemade, has a particulate warning on the back, and is pointed toward the stairs. Does anyone know what it is? This appears to be a homemade motion or tilt sensor, likely built around a small microcontroller like an ESP32 or Arduino. These devices typically contain an accelerometer or passive infrared sensor that logs movement and transmits data over Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. The particulate warning suggests it contains a lithium battery. Hobbyists build these to monitor pet feeders remotely, confirming whether the device dispensed food or got bumped. The best step is to ask your cat-sitting friends directly, then check your network for unknown connected devices. If no one claims it, bag it, dispose of it safely, and review your security footage. What is this heavy brass object, 7 inches long and weighing 17.5 pounds? It's filled with iron and feels far too dense for its size. Does anyone know what it is? This is a counterweight from an antique oil chandelier. Before electric lighting, chandeliers needed to be lowered regularly so the oil reservoirs could be refilled and the wicks trimmed. A pulley system with a heavy counterweight, like this one, balanced the fixture so it could glide smoothly up and down with minimal effort. The brass shell was decorative, often matching the chandelier itself, while the iron core inside provided the necessary mass. Most were discarded when homes were wired for electricity in the early 1900s, making intact examples like this fairly uncommon today. I found this weird plastic triangle with a small tube attached to it. It was at the bottom of a box with mixers, blenders, and other kitchen equipment, so I assumed it was some sort of kitchen tool. Does anyone know what it is? This object is a needle cover from a weight loss injection pen, like Zepbound, Wegovy, or Ozempic. The triangular grip allows the user to easily pull the protective cap off the auto-injector before administering the dose, while the small tube inside shields the needle to prevent accidental sticks and maintain sterility. These pens deliver medications called GLP-1 receptor agonists, which became widely prescribed starting around 2021. It likely ended up in your kitchen box by accident, since the shape really does resemble a small utensil part. What is this small opening inside my window air conditioner? It has a lever on the front panel that lets me slide it open or closed. Any idea what it does? This is a fresh air inlet, sometimes called a ventilation damper. Most window units recirculate the same indoor air over the cooling coils, but this small port works differently. When you slide the lever open, it allows a controlled amount of outside air to mix with the indoor air before being cooled and blown back into the room. This helps reduce stuffiness and lowers carbon dioxide buildup in sealed rooms. When closed, the unit runs in full recirculation mode, which is more energy efficient and keeps outdoor humidity out. I picked these up years ago from a clearance aisle at a small store. They're clearly decorative plates made by a company called ACCAM, sold as a set of 4 wrapped with a ribbon. I feel like there has to be more to them, right? These are decorative glass plates made by ACCAM, a Turkish manufacturer based in Istanbul that specializes in glassware and home decor. The company produces small batch accent pieces rather than full dinnerware sets, which is why yours came packaged as side plates tied with ribbon. You can find their products resold on Poshmark and eBay, typically in the $15 to $30 range per set. They don't carry significant collector value, but they're genuine imported glassware, so go ahead and use them. They were designed to be enjoyed. What is this heavy brass vase I found at a secondhand store? It weighs about 7 pounds, stands about 10 inches tall, and measures 3.5 inches wide. It's not magnetic. Does anyone know what it is? It's a cemetery memorial vase. These heavy brass or bronze containers are designed to hold flowers at grave sites, and the substantial weight you noticed is intentional. The thick walls and weighted base keep the vase stable in wind and prevent theft. Many models are also designed to invert and lock into a threaded receptacle set into the headstone or ground, which protects them from lawnmowers and weather when not in use. Once removed from the cemetery, they often end up at thrift stores, leaving buyers puzzled about their purpose. I spotted this at a Goodwill thrift store, and 4 of us tried to figure out what it was. It stands about 2 feet tall, made of iron, with 3 sections that have pads like it holds something, one on a long neck. There's a dangling metal ring on one end. Does anyone know what it is? This is a decorative vase stand. Wrought iron holders like this became popular in Victorian-era interior decor, with the trend continuing through the early 20th century. The padded sections cradle the curves of a vase to prevent scratching the glass or ceramic surface, while the long neck section supports taller, bottle-shaped vessels. The dangling metal ring is purely a decorative flourish. Unlike functional pieces, this stand has no purpose beyond display, which is why its shape seems so puzzling without the vase in place. I found 2 of these by the train tracks, right where 2 tracks cross at nearly a 90-degree angle. Both pieces are roughly the same size, and they're way heavier than they look. Does anyone know what it is? These are chunks of slag from a rail grinding machine. Rail grinders are large, on-track maintenance vehicles that ride along the rails and use rotating abrasive stones to grind the top surface of the railhead. This process removes surface defects, corrects the rail profile, and extends the life of the track. As the grinding stones cut into the steel, they throw off molten metal residue that cools and hardens into dense, heavy lumps. This buildup often falls off the machine during operation, which is why you'll find these chunks scattered along active rail lines. I was digging on private property in Nevada, near the old immigrant trail, and pulled this out from about a foot deep in the sand. It's a rusted cylindrical object, around 9 inches long and weighing 2 to 3 pounds, with a curled ram's head hook on top and a pointed bottom. Does anyone know what it is? What you found is a ram's horn insulator, used on early telegraph lines across the American West in the mid to late 1800s. The pointed bottom was driven directly into a wooden pole or tree, while the curled iron hook on top supported the telegraph wire. Unlike the glass insulators that became standard later, these iron versions offered minimal electrical insulation, so they were typically used on temporary military or construction lines where speed of installation mattered more than signal quality. Finding one along the Emigrant Trail makes sense, as telegraph lines often followed those same routes westward. I found this in an old shed and have no clue what it does. It's a heavy rusted metal box with 4 round glass things inside and a dial on the side. Does anyone know what it is? This is a vacuum tube power rectifier, a device used to convert alternating current into direct current. Before solid-state diodes became standard in the 1960s, rectifier tubes like these were essential for powering radios, early televisions, and industrial battery chargers. Each glass tube contains a heated cathode and an anode, allowing electrical current to flow in only one direction. The dial on the side likely adjusts the output voltage. Remarkably, vacuum tubes of this era often still function after decades of storage, and units like this are sought after by audio enthusiasts and ham radio operators. There is this flat plastic tubing lining my full door frame, separate from the spongy weather stripping you can also see in the photos. It used to be flexible, but has gone brittle and started peeling, making the door incredibly hard to shut. Does anyone know what it is? This is known as V-strip weather stripping, sometimes called tension seal. It's a thin strip of plastic or metal folded lengthwise into a V shape, which springs open against the door when closed to block drafts, dust, and noise. Modern versions are peel and stick, making replacement straightforward. You can find it at any hardware store by searching for Door Jamb V weather stripping. Over time, the plastic loses its flexibility and the fold flattens out, which is why your door is now jamming against it instead of compressing it cleanly. I found this small cylinder that screws tightly together to extend or shorten its length. It's also magnetic, but only on one end. I'm wondering if I should bin it or if it's actually useful for something. Does anyone know what it is? This is an adjustable support stud, commonly sold as a GPU support brace for desktop computers. The device works by threading the two halves together, letting you fine-tune the height to fit precisely between two surfaces. You place it underneath a heavy component, like a graphics card sagging in its PCIe slot, and twist the cylinder until it fills the gap snugly. The magnetic end allows it to grip onto the metal floor of a PC case, holding it upright in place. Similar designs are also used as small camera or shelf supports. What is this large metal tank found next to a fast food place on a side road in England? At first glance, it looks like a propane tank, but the fittings and shape don't quite match. Does anyone know what it is? It's a bulk beverage gas cylinder, used to pressurize and dispense drinks in the pub and hospitality trade. This particular one belonged to Thwaites Brewery, founded in 1807 in Blackburn, Lancashire. Inside the cylinder is either carbon dioxide or a mixed gas blend, typically 60% carbon dioxide and 40% nitrogen, used for pushing beer from kegs in the cellar up through the lines to the taps. The carbon dioxide also maintains carbonation in lagers, while nitrogen produces the creamy head you see on stouts like Guinness. Breweries deliver these cylinders directly to pubs and swap them out when empty, which is why you sometimes spot them outside establishments awaiting collection. I keep finding these tiny specks all over my room. I zoomed in with my camera and they almost look like little oval eggs. They're scattered on the floor and on my bedding. Does anyone know what these are? Unfortunately, what you're looking at are flea eggs, and possibly flea dirt. Adult fleas lay their eggs on a host, usually a cat or dog, but the eggs are smooth and quickly fall off into carpets, beds, and floor cracks. Each female can produce up to 50 eggs per day. The small dark specks mixed in are flea feces, which is digested blood. To confirm, place some on a wet paper towel. If the specks turn reddish-brown, that's blood, and you have an active infestation that requires treating both your pet and your home. Can anyone identify this piece of ceramic I found today at a former river port in central Kentucky? Google Lens suggests it's Staffordshire pottery from the mid-1800s, but I'm skeptical. The port was operational at that time and received goods coming up the Mississippi River. Does anyone recognize the pattern? This object is known as a piece of Staffordshire transferware, likely ironstone, dating from the mid-1800s to early 1900s. Transferware was made by printing a pattern onto tissue paper using ceramic ink, then pressing the paper onto unfired pottery to transfer the design before glazing and firing. This technique allowed English factories in Staffordshire to mass-produce decorated dishes cheaply, making it the Victorian equivalent of inexpensive everyday crockery. Huge quantities were shipped to American river ports along the Mississippi and Ohio systems, so finding a shard at a former Kentucky port fits the historical trade routes perfectly. This has been sitting in my garage since I moved in. It's long, copper-colored, and surprisingly heavy. I used a tape measure for scale. Does anyone know what it is? This is a primary contact from a large industrial circuit breaker, the type used in switchboards and substations. When the breaker is racked into place inside its cabinet, this copper finger assembly connects directly onto the bus bar, allowing massive amounts of current to flow through. The contact tips often contain a small amount of silver to resist arcing and pitting when the breaker opens under load. Because of the heavy gauge copper and the silver content at the tips, parts like this carry real scrap metal value once they're retired from service. What is this long metal cylindrical object with a keyed groove running down its length? I found it buried in a wash bed. It's solid and heavy with no obvious markings. This is the inner shaft from a screw jack, most likely from a small trailer tongue jack. The keyed groove you see running down the side is what makes it function. Inside the jack housing, a key, or pin, rides in that groove, which prevents the shaft from rotating while a threaded nut above it spins. As the nut turns, it forces the shaft to travel straight up or down, lifting the load. This converts rotational force from the crank handle into vertical lifting power. Once the housing rusts away or breaks, the inner shaft often ends up discarded, which is likely how this one ended up in the wash. What is this set of heavy metal punches I found at a used crafting store? They are a little thicker than an AA battery, solid and dense, each weighing around 125 grams. The notches on one end aren't perfectly uniform, and the flat ends show signs of being struck. There are no markings at all. I bought them thinking they were for leather work, but they look more handmade than typical punches. Any ideas? These are spur drive centers for a wood lathe. The notched end, often called a four-prong drive, bites into one end of a wooden blank to grip it. The opposite end, which shows the strike marks, fits into the headstock of the lathe, sometimes after being tapped in with a mallet to seat the prongs into the wood. As the headstock spins, those prongs transfer the rotation to the workpiece, allowing the woodturner to shape it with chisels. The slight non-uniformity in the notches suggests these were hand-forged or shop-made, which was common for older or shop-built lathes before standardized Morse taper drives became universal. I inherited this locked wooden box years ago and have never managed to get it open. It measures about 18 by 10 by 10 centimeters and weighs 885 grams. The side panels slide out once you unlock the front, and there's a metal strip on top, probably for chaining it to something. It feels solidly packed with contents inside. Does anyone know what it is? This is a miniature collector's cabinet, most likely a numismatist's coin case from the late 19th or early 20th century. Based on your update, the layout confirms it. One large drawer at the bottom and 8 small drawers above, each accessed through countersunk finger holes, is a classic design for organizing coin collections by denomination or date. The oval and rectangular indentations at the top were for displaying featured specimens. The Dutch 10, 1, and half-cent pieces inside, with dates ranging from 1881 to the 1940s, tell us the original owner was a Dutch coin collector. The locking mechanism and the loop for securing it to a desk reflect just how valuable these collections were considered. There's a large plastic tank abandoned on my rural property, sitting out in the woods. It has inlet and outlet pipes and what looks like a particle filter inside, and there's a round green lid lying nearby that seems to match the opening. The property uses a septic system and well water. Any idea what this is and how I'd even get rid of it? This is a multi-flow style aerobic septic tank. Unlike a standard anaerobic septic tank that just lets solids settle, this design actively treats wastewater using oxygen. Air is pumped into the central chamber, which encourages aerobic bacteria to break down organic waste much more efficiently. The internal baffles and that filter you spotted separate solids from the clarified effluent before it discharges to a drain field. These systems are common on properties where soil conditions don't allow a traditional leach field. As for disposal, since it's a large plastic vessel that once held sewage, you'll need to contact a licensed septic contractor to pump, decontaminate, and haul it away. I picked this up at a flea market in Denmark, and I have no idea what it is. It's made of solid brass, has a sort of dish at the top with a hole, and a sturdy base. Any ideas what this could be? This is simply a brass candlestick holder. The dish you see at the top is called a bobèche, and its job is to catch dripping wax before it runs down onto the surface below. The central hole is sized to grip a standard taper candle. Brass became the preferred material for candlesticks starting in the 17th century because it resists corrosion and reflects firelight beautifully. Danish flea markets are full of these, as brass candle holders were a staple in nearly every Scandinavian home well into the 20th century. I spotted these strange devices on the ceiling at an H&M store. Each one is about 1 foot in diameter and maybe 8 to 12 inches tall, with no visible logos, just a small label mentioning Barcelona, Spain. There are dozens of them spaced every 15 to 20 feet across the ceiling. Does anyone know what they are? These are overhead RFID readers, almost certainly manufactured by Kion Technologies, which is headquartered in Barcelona. H&M and Zara use these systems to track every single garment in the store in real time. Each clothing tag contains a tiny RFID chip, and the ceiling readers constantly poll the room to know exactly which items are on the sales floor, in the fitting rooms, or have left the building. This gives staff instant inventory accuracy, helps reduce theft, and lets the store restock shelves before items run out, which is why the readers need to be so densely spaced. What is this strange cylindrical object found washed up on a beach in West Cornwall? It's about 1 centimeter across, faceted, looks like black glass, and has an exposed circular area on the bottom. It doesn't move or make any sound. Does anyone know what it is? This is most likely the corroded head of a Victorian-era hat pin. Hat pins were essential accessories from roughly 1880 to 1920, used by women to secure large, decorative hats to their hair. The heads were often made of faceted jet, black glass, or onyx to give an elegant sparkle, mounted onto long steel shafts up to 12 inches in length. The exposed circular area on the bottom is where the metal shaft would have been seated. After decades in salt water, the steel shaft has completely rusted away, leaving only the durable glass ornament behind. I found this at a French restaurant that used to be a house. It's a really cool place, and it looks like most of the decor was sourced from thrift stores or antique shops. This metal container caught my eye, but I have no idea what it does. Does anyone know what it is? It's a samovar, a traditional heated metal container used to boil water, primarily for making tea. Originating in Russia in the 18th century, the design features a central vertical pipe that holds burning charcoal or wood, which heats the surrounding water reservoir. A small teapot called a zavarka sits on top, brewing a strong tea concentrate that's then diluted with hot water from the samovar's spigot. They became cultural symbols of hospitality across Russia, Iran, and Central Asia, and antique brass models like this one are highly collectible today. I keep seeing this sun symbol behind figures in classical artwork. It has these long, sharp rays radiating outward from a central disc behind the figure's head. I want to recreate it, but I don't know what it's actually called. Does anyone know what it is? This is known as a nimbus, or more specifically, a radiant halo. The motif represents divine light or sacred status surrounding a figure's head. While most people associate it with Christian iconography from the Middle Ages, the symbol is far older. It originates from the pagan nimbus and appears in Egyptian art representing the sun god Ra, as well as in Eastern religious imagery like depictions of Buddha. Stylistically, the geometric, rayed version you're looking at falls under geometric abstractism, a visual style that simplifies the divine glow into clean, sharp lines radiating from a central point. I found this on my bathroom floor this morning. It's a small plastic piece, maybe ½ an inch long, with a rounded tip on one end and a flat base on the other. I have no idea where it came from. Does anyone know what it is? It's a single tooth from a hairbrush. Specifically, this is one of the individual plastic bristles that get embedded into the rubber cushion pad of a paddle or cushion-style hairbrush. Each bristle is set into the pad with the wider base anchoring it in place, while the rounded tip is designed to glide through hair without scratching the scalp. Over time, especially with cheaper brushes, the rubber pad loses its grip and individual teeth pop out. If you check your hairbrush, you'll likely find one missing. I found these under a pot in my garden in France. They're small, round, white spheres clustered together in a damp area under the edge of the roof. I thought maybe frog eggs, but the tadpoles would need water to survive. Does anyone know what they are? These are snail or slug eggs. Garden snails lay clutches of 20 to 50 small, pearly white eggs in moist, sheltered locations, like under pots, stones, or in loose soil. The eggs are typically deposited in a tighter clump, so something likely disturbed yours and spread them out. Unlike frogs, snails don't need standing water for their young. The hatchlings emerge as tiny, fully formed snails after about 2 to 4 weeks, depending on temperature and humidity. The parents don't guard them, they simply lay and leave. I found these in the pockets of some shorts I just bought. They feel like firm foam, don't smell like anything, and I definitely don't own anything like them at home. The shorts have just been sitting in a clean drawer. Why would they be in there? These are leftover pieces of pumice stone from the stonewashing process. Stonewashing has been used on denim and casual wear since the 1950s and was popularized commercially by Levi Strauss in the 1980s. During production, garments are tumbled in large industrial drums with volcanic pumice stones. The abrasive rock softens the fabric and creates that faded, broken-in look. Small fragments often break off and lodge inside seams and pockets. They usually fall out during the first wash, which is why finding them in new clothing is completely harmless. I came across this object lying on the side of the road. I have no idea what it could be or where it came from. Does anyone recognize it? Based on the shape and condition, this appears to be a vehicle component, likely a piece of broken trim or a plastic housing that detached during a collision or from road vibration. Parts like these commonly fall off bumpers, wheel wells, or undercarriages. Without a manufacturer stamp or part number, it's hard to pinpoint the exact vehicle, but items like this are frequently spotted along highways after minor accidents. I found this while sorting through my grandfather's belongings. It looks like a small set of metal molds or tongs, but I've never seen anyone actually use something like this. Does anyone know what it is? This object is known as a teacup clip, a traditional tool used in Chinese tea ceremonies. The clip is designed to grip the rim of small, hot porcelain teacups so the server can lift them without burning their fingers. It's also used to pass cups across the table to guests seated further away, which is considered both practical and polite. These clips are common in gongfu tea sets, a brewing style that dates back to the Ming Dynasty in the 17th century and remains popular today in regions like Fujian and Guangdong. I noticed these odd copper objects in the background of a YouTube interview between Michael Wolff and Joanna Coles from the Daily Beast. The strange part is that they were filmed in separate rooms, but both of them appear to have the exact same copper item on their bookshelves. What is it? It's an ASME Ellie Award, the trophy given out by the American Society of Magazine Editors. The award is officially named after the elephant sculpture designed by artist Alexander Calder in 1969, and the copper finish has become its signature look. The Ellies are the magazine industry's highest honor, recognizing excellence in reporting, design, and publishing. Both Wolff and Coles are veteran magazine journalists, which explains why each of them has one displayed prominently behind their desk. My coworker and I found this in a dressing room, and we have no idea what it is. It says, "Please recycle," and "Made in the USA" on it. Does anyone know what it is? What you found is a toilet bowl air freshener cartridge. These plastic units clip onto the rim of a commercial toilet bowl, and every time the toilet flushes, water passes through the cartridge and dissolves a small amount of fragrance and cleaning agent. The result is a continuously deodorized bowl and a light scent released into the restroom. They typically last about 30 days before needing replacement, which is why you see them most often in office buildings, restaurants, and retail dressing room restrooms. I found these at the end of my driveway. They're small, about the size of a dime, bright red, and look almost like candy. A second pack in the road got run over, and the inside is a shimmery crystal powder. There's a history of drug use in the apartments nearby, so I'm wondering if these could be something illegal. Does anyone know what they are? These are Keepy Uppy cherry sour candies, which were packaged inside Bluey-themed pre-filled plastic Easter eggs sold this past spring. Bluey is the hit Australian animated show, and the candies were licensed merchandise tied to the character's favorite balloon-bouncing game. The crystal powder appearance comes from the sour sugar coating breaking apart when crushed. Buyers reported that these candies were extremely hard, almost like jawbreakers, which is why a run-over pack shatters into that shimmery dust rather than smearing. What is this small, greenish-yellow, silicone funnel-shaped thing that came with an open box sauté pan I bought on Amazon? The tube in the center goes all the way through, so it can't be used as a traditional funnel. I'm not sure if it actually belongs with the pan or was included by mistake. Does anyone know what it is? This is a replacement nose tip from a Nocebu brand electric nasal aspirator, a device parents use to clear mucus from a baby's nose. The soft silicone cone is designed to seal gently against a child's nostril, while the open tube running through the center allows suction from the motorized base to pull congestion out. The reason the funnel goes all the way through is exactly that. It's a suction pathway, not a pouring funnel. It almost certainly ended up in your sauté pan box by accident during the Amazon return and repackaging process. I ordered some clothes off Depop, and when I opened the package, this large cape-like fabric was stuffed inside on top of my order. The blue outer material looks like velvet, and the red inner lining looks like silk or satin. The seller had no clue it was in there. Does anyone know what it is? This is an academic hood, part of the traditional regalia worn during graduation ceremonies. The design dates back to medieval European universities in the 12th century, when scholars wore hoods for warmth. Today, the colors carry specific meaning. The velvet trim indicates the field of study, while the satin lining displays the official colors of the institution that granted the degree. The length and shape also signal the level of the degree, with longer hoods reserved for doctoral graduates. It was likely misplaced in shipping by a previous handler. My friend just took over an old mechanic shop, and we found this thick steel cylinder sticking out of the floor. It's about 3 feet tall and 10 inches in diameter, stamped with U.S. Air Compressor Company, Cleveland, Ohio. It has 2 grease connectors and 8 threaded holes on top. He wants to rip it out, but what's hiding underneath? What you found is the top of an in-ground single-post vehicle lift. These were the industry standard in service stations from roughly the 1920s through the 1970s. The system works on an air over hydraulic principle. Compressed air pushes hydraulic fluid from a buried tank into a cylinder, which raises a long shaft inside the sleeve you see, lifting the car above. The worn seal around the base and those vertical scratches suggest it saw heavy use. Removing it means cutting the concrete and severing the hydraulic and air lines. But be warned, the underground tank likely still contains hydraulic fluid. If it is leaked, your friend may face costly soil remediation before the job is done. What is this pinkish object I found in my backyard? It's about 1 inch across, feels hard like a rock, but the color is all wrong. One side is darker, almost like it partially dissolved in the rain. I have a dog, so I'm a little worried about what it could be. It's a piece of sidewalk chalk that's been left out in the rain. Sidewalk chalk is made primarily from calcium sulfate, also known as gypsum, mixed with pigments and a binder, then pressed into sticks. Unlike traditional blackboard chalk made from calcium carbonate, this version is softer and more porous. When exposed to moisture, the binder breaks down and the chalk slowly dissolves, which explains the darker, eroded side. The good news is that sidewalk chalk is non-toxic, so your dog is safe. What is this heavy, rusted metal object I found on a riverbank? It's slightly tapered, roughly cylindrical, and has a rectangular hole through the middle. There's an old train bridge and some brick structures nearby. This is a counterweight, likely from a pump jack, a windmill, or used as ballast on an agricultural tractor's drawbar. In windmill and pump jack applications, the weight hangs on a rod or rope to balance the upstroke and downstroke of the pump piston, reducing the load on the motor or wind vanes. The rectangular hole is the mounting point, where it slides onto a flat bar or hooks onto a linkage. These were typically cast iron and weighed anywhere from 20 to 80 pounds. Given the location near a train bridge and brick industrial structures, it may have been part of equipment used in the area decades ago. What is this small fabric strap about 16 inches long with a metal O-ring on each end? It seems too small to be useful for much. Does anyone know what it is? This is a complimentary slip collar that comes packaged with Flexi brand retractable dog leashes. Flexi, the German company founded by Manfred Bogdan in 1973, has included these small fabric loops with their leash products for decades as a backup attachment point. The design is simple. You thread one O-ring through the other to form an adjustable loop around the dog's neck, then clip the leash to the free ring. They're intended as an emergency or temporary collar if a dog's regular collar fails during a walk. Most owners never use them, but they make handy luggage tags or keychain straps. What are these strange weights I keep seeing on power lines here in the UK? They sit on either side of the insulating stacks, and I've wondered about them for years. They don't look like electrical connectors. Does anyone know what they are? These are known as Stockbridge dampers, vibration control devices installed on overhead transmission lines. Invented by George H. Stockbridge in 1925, they consist of 2 weighted masses connected by a short length of flexible steel cable, which is clamped to the main power line. When wind blows across the cables, it creates oscillations that can fatigue and eventually break the wire. The damper's weights vibrate out of phase with the line, absorbing that energy and dissipating it as heat through internal friction in the cable strands. Without them, transmission lines would suffer constant structural damage. What is this device mounted on the wall of my hotel room from a building built in the 1970s? It's bolted directly to the wall and can't be unplugged. The cord coming out of it is actually a power bar for lamps in the alarm clock. I can hear a small motor or fan running, but I don't feel any airflow. There are no markings on the sides or bottom. Does anyone know what it is? This is most likely a wall-mounted electric resistance heater, common in hotels and apartments built during the 1970s. The faint motor sound you hear is a small convection fan or a thermostat relay cycling on and off. These units work by passing electricity through internal heating coils, which warm the surrounding air. The reason you don't feel strong airflow is that many of these rely on natural convection, where warm air rises passively rather than being pushed out forcefully. The built-in power outlet was a common feature, allowing guests to plug in lamps without running cords across the floor. We just bought a used Skoda Scala and noticed this strange plastic mount stuck to the inside of the windscreen. It's small, rectangular, and clearly designed to hold something specific, but whatever was attached is long gone. Does anyone know what it is? This is a mounting bracket for an electronic toll collection transponder. In many European countries, including Portugal, where the system is called Via Verde, drivers attach a small device behind the rear-view mirror that communicates with overhead toll gantries using radio frequency identification, or RFID. As the car passes through a toll point at highway speed, the reader detects the transponder and automatically charges the linked account. The previous owner likely took the device with them, leaving just the adhesive cradle behind. What is this firm but squeezy object found in the middle of an Irish field? I was out flying a kite when I stumbled across it. It has an odd, lumpy shape, and Google Lens insists it's quartz, but it's clearly not stone. Does anyone know what it is? It's a reaction training ball, sometimes sold as a reflex ball or reaction bouncer. The design is intentionally asymmetrical, with multiple lobes or bumps that make it ricochet unpredictably when thrown against a hard surface. Athletes, boxers, and physical education students use them to sharpen hand-eye coordination and shorten reaction time. Because the rebound angle is impossible to predict, your brain and body have to respond in fractions of a second. It probably rolled out of someone's bag during a walk across the field. I saw this intriguing monstrosity today, and I honestly can't quite process what I'm looking at. It has a long rectangular body, what appear to be windows along the side, and is parked out in a field. Given current world events, I'm wondering if this might be my ticket out. Does anyone know what it is? This object is known as a cow. Despite the strong visual resemblance to a recreational vehicle, the rectangular silhouette is actually a natural grazing posture, with the body extended horizontally for stability while feeding. The patches you might mistake for windows are evolved camouflage markings, which break up the animal's outline and confuse predators. The four supports underneath are hooves, not wheels, and any apparent rotation is just motion blur as the cow redistributes its weight. Cattle like this have been selectively bred for thousands of years, since around 10,500 years ago in the Near East, for milk and meat production rather than transportation. What is this strange wire mesh contraption? It has a curved funnel shape and looks like it's designed to hang from the ceiling. Does anyone know what it is? It's a ball return attachment from a children's basketball hoop. These accessories clip onto the rim of a standard hoop and use a net or wire funnel to catch the ball after it passes through. Gravity then channels the ball down and out through a directional chute, sending it back toward the player. The design eliminates the need to chase rebounds, which keeps practice sessions flowing and helps young players work on repetitive shooting drills. Without the hoop attached, the piece looks completely unrecognizable. These tiny fibers are all over me. I noticed it first on things I put inside my bag, like my scarf, iPad, and phone, but now they're showing up on my clothes, too. I have no clue what they are or where they're coming from. Does anyone know? These are loose microfibers, most likely shed from a fleece blanket, a microfiber towel, or the lining of your bag. Synthetic materials like polyester fleece are made from extremely fine plastic strands that break free with friction and static cling. Once they detach, The static charge makes them stick to electronics, fabric, and skin. The fact that everything in your bag is affected points to the bag's interior lining as the source. Turning the bag inside out and shaking or vacuuming it usually removes the bulk of the shedding. My mom got these as a gift from a friend. They came in a small round tin and look like little white tea bags. We have no idea what they are or how to use them. Does anyone know what they are? These are oral pouches, specifically a tobacco-free and nicotine-free variety. The format was popularized by Swedish snus, which dates back to the early 1800s, but modern pouches like these contain plant fibers, flavorings, and sometimes caffeine or herbal extracts instead of tobacco. The user places one between the upper lip and gum, where it slowly releases flavor for around 20 to 30 minutes. They're marketed as a substitute for traditional snus or chewing tobacco, giving the same oral habit without the active ingredients. What are these strange uniform lines stretching across the entire beach? They run perfectly parallel, end abruptly at the same point, and there are only a few tire tracks nearby. Does anyone know what made them? These tracks were left by a beach comber, also called a sand cleaning machine. It's a large rake-like attachment towed behind a tractor, typically used by municipalities at dawn before swimmers arrive. As it moves, rotating tines lift the top 4 to 6 inches of sand onto a vibrating screen, which sifts out cigarette butts, broken glass, seaweed, and plastic, then deposits the clean sand back down. The uniform lines you see are the imprint left by the screen mesh. The tracks end abruptly, because that's simply where the operator lifted the machine and turned around. I found this behind the sink at my work. It looks like a TV remote, but with a strange nozzle on the front and a small screen. Does anyone know what it is? This is an infrared thermometer used for cooking, often called a temperature gun. When you pull the trigger, it emits a focused beam that measures the infrared radiation given off by any surface, instantly calculating its temperature without making contact. In professional kitchens, chefs use them to check pan heat before searing, verify oil temperature for frying, or confirm that food storage areas stay within safe ranges. The technology was originally developed in the 1930s for industrial use, but compact versions became standard kitchen equipment in the 2000s. My husband and I have been hearing this scary animal noise at night coming from the woods behind our house. We know coyotes pass through, but this sound is completely different. It usually happens between 1 and 3 in the morning. Does anyone know what it is? That sound is a roe deer. Despite their delicate appearance, roe deer produce a harsh, raspy bark that's often described as sounding like a dog being strangled, or even a demonic growl. Both males and females use this call as an alarm signal when they sense a predator, or during the July rutting season to mark territory. The bark can carry over half a mile through quiet woodland, which is why it sounds so unsettling at night. They're most vocal in the early morning hours, exactly matching your time frame. I found this lying on a road while heading to California. It looks like a coin, with strange symbols and what appears to be a cross on one side. Could this be something valuable? Does anyone know what it is? What you found is a reproduction of a Spanish colonial silver coin, commonly called a piece of 8, or, in Spanish, an 8 real. The originals were minted starting in 1497 after a reform by King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain. Each coin contained roughly 1 ounce of silver and was struck at colonial mints in Mexico, Peru, and Bolivia using silver extracted from the New World. These coins became the first global currency, accepted everywhere from the Americas to China, and they were even legal tender in the United States until 1857. However, authentic examples have sharp detail and proper weight, while souvenir reproductions like this one are mass-produced and contain no real silver. My friend and I found these left behind by his godmother. They look like 2 long sticks connected by loops of string or rope. We think we might know what they are for, but we're not entirely sure. Does anyone know what these are? These are giant bubble wands, sometimes called tri-string bubble makers. The design uses 2 rigid handles connected by a triangular loop of absorbent cotton or wool string. When you dip the strings into a tray of soap solution and slowly pull the handles apart while walking backwards, the loop captures a thin film of liquid. Air pressure then inflates that film into massive bubbles, often several feet long. The trick relies on surface tension and the string holding more solution than a solid wand could. These became popular at outdoor festivals in the 1980s, and modern bubble formulas using glycerin and polymers like J-Lube allow the bubbles to grow huge before popping. What are these strange lights I filmed in Southern California, somewhere between Pasadena and Pomona? They went on for several minutes, strobing rapidly without changing colors, so I don't think they were fireworks. The lights seemed to come from the surface and lit up a huge section of cloud. Does anyone know what this is? This is known as intra-cloud lightning, sometimes abbreviated as IC lightning. Unlike the cloud-to-ground bolts most people picture, this type of discharge happens entirely within a single thunderstorm cloud, jumping between regions of positive and negative charge. Because the lightning channel is hidden by water droplets and ice crystals, you don't see a clear bolt. Instead, the entire cloud lights up like a giant lamp, often flashing repeatedly as multiple discharges occur in sequence. Intracloud strikes actually make up the majority of all lightning on Earth, accounting for roughly 75% of discharges. The strobing effect you observed is caused by stepped leader processes inside the cloud, each lasting only milliseconds, but appearing rapidly enough to look like a continuous flicker. My dad and I were inspecting our irrigation pipes, and we found this strange orangish mass. It's spiky, almost like a sea urchin, and it feels somewhat hard to the touch. What is this thing? What you're looking at is a root ball. Tree and plant roots are constantly searching for water, and when they detect moisture leaking from a pipe fitting, they grow toward it aggressively. Once a root finds a small crack or loose joint, it pushes inside and expands. Without soil or rocks to push against, the roots branch out into these dense, spiky formations. Plumbers regularly remove root masses from pipes, sometimes pulling out clogs over 25 feet long. After repairing the leak, rock salt poured into the soil around the pipe helps prevent regrowth. I've been hanging on to this for a while, but I have no idea what it is. I don't want to throw it out in case it's some critical piece of something. It's about 2.5 inches long and 2 inches wide. Anyone know what it is? This is a carriage bolt designed to hold a lawnmower handle straight. The wide, rounded head sits flush against the handle tubing, while the square shoulder underneath bites into the metal or plastic to prevent the bolt from spinning when you tighten the nut on the other side. This locking action is what keeps the upper handle aligned with the lower handle on push mowers, even after hours of vibration. If your mower's handle ever wobbles, this is the part that needs tightening or replacing. What is this that came from an oyster? I was carving cheese from it and this came out. Does anyone know what it is? It's a natural oyster pearl. Pearls form when an irritant, such as a grain of sand or a parasite, becomes trapped inside the oyster's shell. The oyster responds by coating the intruder with layers of nacre, the same iridescent material that lines the inside of its shell. Over months or years, these layers build up into a pearl. Edible oysters rarely produce gem-quality pearls, since they belong to different species than true pearl oysters, so what you found is usually small and dull, but still a genuine natural pearl. I got a chance to walk around an NHL hockey rink after a game and spotted this next to the player's bench. It's a red case filled with what look like metal springs sticking straight up. Does anyone know what it is? This is a hockey glove and equipment dryer. The vertical coils you see are actually heated air vents shaped like springs. Players slide their wet gloves, helmets, or skates over each coil between periods or after practice. Warm air circulates up through the spring shape, pushing moisture out of the padding and lining. NHL teams rely on these units because sweat-soaked gloves can lose grip and stiffen up within minutes, so rapid drying between shifts keeps performance consistent and helps prevent bacterial buildup in the gear. I found this old abandoned piece of farm machinery in the John Day area of Northeast Oregon. It has heavy metal teeth and the name Fairbanks Morse stamped on one side. Does anyone know what it is? This is a belt-driven shredder, manufactured by Fairbanks Morse, a company founded in 1830 in Vermont that became famous for scales, engines, and farm equipment. The angled teeth are the dead giveaway. A long, flat belt would have connected the large pulley wheel to a stationary engine or tractor, spinning a drum of these teeth at high speed. As crop stalks, hay, or brush were fed in, the rotating teeth tore the material into smaller pieces for compost, feed, or field clearing. Belt-driven equipment like this was standard on American farms from the 1900s through the 1940s, before self-powered tractor implements took over. I kept driving past this large metal frame outside someone's property. It had a netted string basket hanging from side to side, and none of us could figure out what it was for. Does anyone know what it is? It's a sports equipment holder. We actually went back, and the owner was outside, so we asked him directly. He said the frame is designed to store all kinds of sports gear, with the netted basket holding balls, helmets, gloves, and bats in one organized place. These racks are commonly used in garages, on patios, or in coaching storage areas. The open mesh design allows wet gear to air dry while keeping everything visible and accessible. Mystery solved, and we ended up taking it home. A box arrived at an attorney's office from a company called Personal Creations, but the attorney never ordered anything. Inside were 2 wooden squares with notches, each about 8 inches long by 6 inches wide. There were no instructions, and when we tried fitting them together through the slots, it was loose and wobbly. Does anyone know what it is? It's a wooden mobile phone docking station. The 2 pieces slot together perpendicularly to form a small stand, with the notches designed to cradle a smartphone at a comfortable viewing angle. A charging cable threads through one of the openings so the phone can power up while docked. Personal Creations is a company known for customized and engraved gifts, so this was likely meant to be personalized with a name or message. The wobble you noticed disappears once a phone is seated in place, since the device's weight stabilizes the joint. I picked this up at an estate sale, mixed in with some old jewelry. It's a small metal device, about 2 to 2.5 inches long, with what look like glass marbles set inside. I thought the marbles were supposed to roll freely, but these are stuck in place. Any idea what this is? This object is known as a pocket knife and razor blade sharpener. Designs like this became popular in the early to mid-20th century, often carried by tradesmen, barbers, and home cooks. The spheres you see are not actually glass marbles, but hardened ceramic or tungsten carbide wheels. When you drag a blade through the slot between them, the wheels rotate slightly and abrasively grind a fresh edge onto the steel at a fixed angle. The fact that yours don't spin freely means decades of metal shavings and oil have gummed up the bearings, but a careful cleaning could bring it back to working order. I picked this up at an antique store while traveling in Japan. It's a small yellow and black badge with a bright red feather attached, and it's clearly dated 2003. What is this strange little pin used for? It's a red feather community chest pin, known in Japanese as Akai Hane Kyoto Boken. The campaign was launched in Japan in 1947, modeled after the American community chest fundraising movement that began in the early 20th century. Every October, volunteers across Japan collect donations for local welfare programs, and contributors receive a small red feather pin to wear as proof of their donation. Your specific badge marks the 2003 campaign year. The red feather itself was chosen because it symbolizes courage and goodwill, a tradition borrowed from the American Red Cross campaigns of the 1940s. What is this metal handle I found buried in my kitchen drawer? It measures about 4.5 inches long and 1.25 inches wide, and the only marking on it is the name Burton. It looks like it's missing an attachment. Any ideas? What you have is the detachable handle from a Burton electric indoor grill accessory set. Burton, a brand owned by Maximatic, manufactures countertop cooking appliances, including their popular stovetop and electric grills. This handle is designed to clip onto removable grill plates or griddle inserts, allowing you to safely lift hot cooking surfaces out of the appliance for cleaning. The locking mechanism on the underside grips the plate edge when you squeeze. Without the matching grill plates, the handle on its own has limited use, but replacements are often listed on auction sites for owners who lost theirs. What is this electronic assembly mounted on top of this Suburban? I took a terrible photo, sorry about that. It was parked in a dealership lot. Could it be a storm tracker or some kind of radio rig? And is that an otherwise standard Suburban underneath? What you are looking at is a live broadcast news truck, most likely from Fox 5. The large white structure is a pneumatic mast that telescopes upward, sometimes reaching 42 feet in the air. At the top sits a microwave or satellite dish that beams live video back to the station's main tower. When a reporter goes live from a scene, the operator raises this mast to get line of sight above buildings and trees. The Suburban chassis is popular for this role because it has the payload capacity to carry the heavy generators, transmitters, and editing equipment needed for field broadcasting. There's a round thing with a wire leading out of it mounted on the ceiling of my garage. The house was built in 1980. It has what looks like a button, but you can't press it, and it's been painted over even though it clearly says, "Do not paint." Any ideas what it is? This is a fixed temperature heat detector. Unlike a smoke alarm, this device does not detect particles in the air, which makes it ideal for dusty or fume-filled environments like garages, where a smoke alarm would constantly false alarm. Inside the housing is a eutectic alloy, a metal designed to melt at a specific temperature, typically 135 or 194 degrees Fahrenheit. When the surrounding air reaches that threshold, the alloy melts and triggers the alarm circuit. The wire you see connects it to a central alarm panel, and the unit is meant to be replaced rather than reset after activation. What are these tall radio antennas standing right at the entrance and exit of the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel in Virginia? They look like communication towers, but they're positioned in a very specific spot. Does anyone know what they're for? These are cellular repeater antennas. Because radio signals cannot penetrate the thick concrete and earth above a tunnel, your phone would normally lose service the moment you drove inside. To solve this, carriers install antennas at both portals that capture the cellular signal from outside. That signal is then fed into a distributed antenna system, essentially a long cable with smaller radiators running the length of the tunnel ceiling. This rebroadcasts the signal inside, allowing you to continue a phone call or stream music without interruption as you pass beneath the water. I found this small metal piece in Cole Harbour, Vancouver, British Columbia. It's about 90 millimeters wide, and I genuinely thought I'd discovered some kind of treasure. It has an unusual shape with a ring around a sphere. Does anyone know what this is? This is the orb logo from the fashion designer Vivienne Westwood, and in your photo, it's actually upside down. The orb, a sphere encircled by a Saturn-like ring topped with a cross, was introduced by Westwood in 1987 as her signature emblem. She combined the royal sovereign's orb, which symbolizes tradition, with the ring of Saturn to represent the future, capturing her punk meets aristocracy aesthetic. The piece you found likely broke off a necklace, earring, or handbag charm. Authentic ones are made of brass or silver and can be worth quite a bit on the resale market. I came across this strange device in a remote field in continental Europe, surrounded by solar panels. The box on top seemed to be constantly scanning the sky, but when I stopped to watch, it rotated and focused on me for a moment, then went back to scanning. Does anyone know what it is? This is a bird detection system, often called a BDS unit. These are deployed around wind farms, solar fields, and airports to track birds in flight using a combination of optical cameras and radar. The unit scans the sky continuously, and when it identifies a protected species like an eagle or stork approaching, it can trigger nearby wind turbines to slow down or stop, preventing collisions. The reason it locked on to you briefly is that its motion tracking algorithm detected a moving, warm object before classifying you as non-avian and resuming its sweep. I found this white plastic object in a kitchen cupboard, tucked in with the rice cooker utensils. It's solid, has a flat end and a rounded grip, but no markings at all. Does anyone know what it is? This is a blender tamper, specifically the style that comes with high-powered blenders like the Vitamix. Its job is to push thick ingredients down into the blades while the machine is running. The length is carefully calibrated so that, when inserted through the lid, the tip cannot reach the spinning blades, keeping your fingers and the tool safe. Tampers became standard accessories in the 1990s when blenders gained enough power to handle frozen fruit, nut butters, and thick smoothies that would otherwise jam the motor. I found these round iron nodules stored inside 1980s-era plastic soda bottles. Each one is about 3/8 of an inch in diameter. They're definitely iron because they stick to a magnet and throw sparks when ground. Does anyone know what they are? These are knockout slugs from a metal punch. When electricians or telephone installers need to run conduit through a steel junction box or equipment cabinet, they use a hydraulic or screw-type knockout punch that shears a clean circular hole through the metal. Each hole produces one of these slugs as a byproduct. The 3/8-inch size suggests small conduit fittings, and a single installer working on telecommunications hardware in the 80s could easily generate hundreds in a year. Someone clearly saved them up in soda bottles, possibly to recycle the steel, or just because they're oddly satisfying to collect. I bought this at an estate sale in Florida, and I'm trying to figure out what it is. It's a large wooden wheel, 36 inches across, with numbers around the edge and metal flashing in the center. Is this an old roulette wheel? This is an antique carnival wheel, also called a game of chance wheel. These were a staple of American fairs and traveling carnivals from the late 1800s through the mid-20th century. The wheel rotates on a central post, and a flexible leather or metal arrow mounted above clicks against small nails driven around the outer rim. As the wheel slows, the arrow ticks across each nail, producing that signature, suspenseful sound before stopping on a number. Operators would pay out prizes based on specific numbers or multiples, with odds heavily favoring the house. What is this rusty, Y-shaped piece of metal, found in delivered topsoil in East Ireland back in the 1980s? It measures about 6 by 5 centimeters with no screws, pins, or welds, and it has those stringy rust layers you see on old wrought iron. Does anyone know what it is? This is a really old spur, the kind worn on the heel of a rider's boot to direct a horse. The two curved arms, called the heel band, would have wrapped around the back of the boot, while the now broken end once held a small spike or rowel. Hand-forged spurs like this were common across Ireland and Britain for centuries, with designs barely changing from the medieval period into the 1800s. The wrought iron construction and lack of modern fasteners suggest this one is at least a couple of hundred years old, possibly much older. Which of these items surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments. For more unknown items, check out the other videos on our channel. Hit like and subscribe.